It is 50,000 BC. The sun just went down. No Netflix. No phone. No inbox. Just fire. And thick choking smoke curling directly into someone's face. And at some point, one of your ancestors had a thought. What if I did that on purpose? This is the story of how humans discovered smoking. Not cigarettes. Not cigars. Not the guy outside the office. The very first time a human being intentionally inhaled something burning. And why that might be one of the oldest habits our species has. Here is the thing nobody tells you. Smoking does not start with tobacco. It does not start with trade routes, or ceremonies, or agriculture. The desire to inhale smoke might be hardwired into us, at a level that predates civilization entirely. And the evidence for this is genuinely insane. Let's start at the beginning. Before you can smoke anything, you need fire. And fire has been with us for a very long time. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use dates back 1 million years. A site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Archaeologists found burnt plant ash and charred bone, not from a wildfire, from a deliberate contained fire. 1 million years ago, we were not even Homo sapiens yet. That was Homo erectus, our earlier cousin, smaller brain, heavier brow. They sat around fires just like we do. They cooked. They stayed warm. They breathed smoke. Every day, for hundreds of thousands of years. Smoke was just the air they lived in. Nobody had an app to check air quality, because nobody had an app, or air quality, or lungs that expected better. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Some of that smoke was not just wood smoke. When you burn organic matter, you get a cocktail of compounds. Some plants, when combusted, release psychoactive chemicals, alkaloids, terpene compounds, compounds that interact with the human nervous system in ways that are noticeable. In other words, some of our ancestors were accidentally getting high around the campfire, and they had absolutely no idea why they suddenly felt amazing. This is not a fringe theory. Researchers have proposed this for decades. Early humans in forested environments were regularly exposed to psychoactive plant smoke. Cannabis, Nicotiana species, various entheogens growing naturally across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Now here is the part that will rearrange your brain entirely. The human brain has receptors that respond to cannabinoids, already built in. These receptors did not evolve because of cannabis. They are part of our endocannabinoid system. It regulates mood, memory, appetite, pain. It was already there, waiting. So when a human first inhaled smoke from a burning cannabis plant, their brain was not confused. Their brain said, "Oh, hello. I have been waiting for you." That first accidental hit of psychoactive smoke around a prehistoric campfire might be the true origin of smoking. Not a decision, just a very pleasant accident. Repeated enough times that someone eventually thought to recreate it on purpose. Think about what that means. A tired hunter, sat downwind, of the wrong bush, had a great evening, and the entire history of smoking may trace back to that exact moment. History is sometimes beautiful in the most absurd ways. Now, here is where we have to be careful about timelines. Ancient humans being exposed to psychoactive smoke and ancient humans intentionally cultivating things to smoke are very different claims. Let's talk about what the archaeology actually tells us. The oldest direct evidence of intentional cannabis use comes from a burial site in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, dating to around 500 BCE. That is 2,500 years ago. Excavators found wooden braziers containing stones that had been superheated, alongside residue from cannabis plants with unusually high THC content. This was not wild cannabis used for rope or seeds. This was the good stuff, and it was placed directly in a ritual burial context. Someone was buried with their smoking apparatus. Now here is the question that should be in the back of your mind. Does the absence of older physical evidence mean it did not happen earlier? Or does it just mean we have not found it yet? We find stone tools from 3 million years ago, because stone is indestructible. But a wooden pipe filled with dried herbs, gone in centuries under normal burial conditions. A leather pouch of cannabis, dissolved back into the earth long before any archaeologist arrived. Absence of evidence is absolutely not evidence of absence, not with organic material. Now there is a man named Herodotus, and his account of what he witnessed changes everything. Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian, writing in the 5th century BCE. He described in remarkable detail the Scythians, a nomadic people from the Eurasian steppe. He described what he called a vapor bath, and it was extraordinary. They set up small enclosed tents, heated stones until they glowed red, then threw hemp seeds onto those glowing stones inside the tent, then sat inside the tent, and inhaled the smoke. And as Herodotus wrote, they howled with pleasure. For centuries, historians assumed he was exaggerating, making it up, getting it wrong. Then archaeologists started excavating Scythian burial mounds and found bronze braziers, heated stones, hemp residue, exactly what Herodotus described. The man was simply reporting what he saw. He was not embellishing. If anything, he was underselling it. Now let us talk about tobacco, because it is the one most people associate with smoking. Tobacco is a plant native to the Americas. That matters enormously. It means tobacco was completely unknown to Europe, Africa, and Asia until the late 1400s. When European explorers arrived in the Caribbean in 1492, they saw something strange. Columbus himself wrote about it. Men and women walking around with small glowing sticks, inhaling the smoke from burning dried leaves, letting it back out through their nose and mouth. His crew was completely baffled. His crew also, within weeks, tried it themselves. Because of course they did. But tobacco use in the Americas is far older than 1492. Far older. Archaeological evidence of tobacco has been found dating back at least 3,500 years in the southeastern United States. Some researchers believe it could go back considerably further, possibly 10,000 years, tied to the very earliest development of cultivation in the Amazon basin. And here is what matters about tobacco in ancient America. It was not recreational, not primarily. Tobacco was sacred, used in healing rituals, communication with the spirit world, binding agreements between tribes. Blowing smoke on someone was an act of blessing, of connection, of respect. A shaman who smoked was not having a cigarette break. He was opening a channel between the living and the divine. The smoke itself was considered alive, a messenger that traveled between worlds, carrying prayers upward, bringing visions downward. That framing explains everything about how tobacco was used for thousands of years. When something is sacred, you treat it with reverence. You do not chain smoke it while watching TV. The idea of tobacco as a casual everyday habit is an almost entirely European invention, and a fairly recent one at that. Now, there is a piece of this story that most people have never heard, and it might be the oldest evidence of intentional smoking in the entire archaeological record. In 2019, researchers made a remarkable discovery. In the Great Salt Lake Desert of Utah, they found a hearth, a cooking and heating fire, roughly 12,000 years old. Inside, the seeds of Nicotiana attenuata, a wild tobacco species native to North America. Not seeds that blew in by accident. Concentrated, deliberately placed. This site predates any known pottery or pipe artifacts in the region by thousands of years. People were throwing tobacco into fires 12,000 years ago, before pipes existed to smoke it through. And this raises a question that has fascinated anthropologists for decades. If people were doing this in North America 12,000 years ago, what were people in Africa, Asia, and Europe doing with their local psychoactive plants at the same time? Because 12,000 years ago, humans were everywhere. Every continent, every climate. And the human desire to alter consciousness is not an American phenomenon. It is a human phenomenon. Now, let me introduce you to something called the intoxication hypothesis. And it might be the most important idea in this entire video. Across virtually every human culture ever documented, people have sought out ways to alter their consciousness. Fermented beverages, psychedelic mushrooms, inhaled smoke, chewed plant leaves, swallowed seeds. This behavior is so universal, so persistent, so independently repeated across cultures, that some researchers believe it is not accidental. Ronald Siegel, a psychopharmacologist at UCLA, proposed something extraordinary in the 1980s. The pursuit of intoxication is a fourth biological drive, alongside hunger, thirst, and sex, biologically embedded in animal behavior. Not just humans, animals. Elephants deliberately seek out fermented marula fruit to get drunk, on purpose. Reindeer in Siberia have been observed eating Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and then drinking the urine of other reindeer who already ate the mushrooms, because the psychoactive compounds pass through intact. Reindeer doing drug recycling. In Siberia. Honestly, respect. The point is, if this drive is this deep and this old, it goes beyond choice. It is entirely reasonable to propose that early humans were deliberately exposing themselves to psychoactive smoke, long before they had pottery, or pipes, or any of the tools we normally associate with smoking. Maybe they burned those plants during rituals. Maybe they selected campsites near specific plants. Maybe they learned which smoke made you feel good, and which made you feel like you were dying, which with some plants is a distinction that kills you once before you figure it out. Prehistoric trial and error. Very high stakes. Occasionally literally fatal. But the ones who survived, they remembered. They told others. They passed it down. Through generations of knowledge that never got written, but got lived. Not libraries. Not schools. Lived experience passed mouth to ear around a fire in the dark. That is how most human knowledge worked for most of human history. Now, let us talk about something that rarely comes up. Smoking as medicine. Long before smoking was recreational. Long before it was spiritual. It may have been medical first. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest known medical documents in the world, dating to ancient Egypt, around 1550 BCE, over 3,500 years old. It describes treatments involving the inhalation of smoke from heated herbs, for throat and lung conditions. Yes, ancient Egyptians treated lung problems by inhaling smoke into the lungs. The thinking was not crazy by the standards of the time. Smoke reaches the lungs directly. If the plant has medicinal properties, delivering it via smoke makes a certain logical sense. The lungs as a delivery mechanism. Inhaled medicine. We still do this today. Asthma inhalers, anesthetic gases, nebulizers. The delivery method survived. The burning part mostly did not. Ancient Greece used fumigation, therapeutic smoke, regularly. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, wrote about inhalation of herbal vapors for treating disease. The guy whose oath doctors still take today. He recommended inhaling herbal smoke. Ancient Indian Ayurvedic medicine describes a practice called dhumapana, smoke drinking. Literally smoke drinking. The inhalation of medicinal herbs through pipes. Over 3,000 years old. With specific plants, specific conditions, specific preparations. This was not casual. This was a sophisticated medical system with centuries of refinement behind it. Ancient China, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, ancient India, all of them. In virtually every early civilization on record, people inhaled smoke deliberately for therapeutic purposes. Not because they were addicted, not because they thought it was cool, because it worked, or at least it worked enough times that they kept doing it. In a world without antibiotics, work sometimes was a pretty meaningful bar to clear. Now there is another angle that does not get enough attention. The social dimension. What shared smoking did to human groups. Humans are deeply social animals. We evolved in groups. Group cohesion was survival. Isolated individuals died. Groups survived. Anything that enhanced group cohesion had survival value. And shared rituals, including shared consumption of psychoactive substances, are extraordinarily powerful tools for social cohesion. When a group of people undergo a shared altered experience together, it creates something remarkable. A sense of connection, of trust, of mutual understanding that is very hard to replicate any other way. Modern neuroscience has confirmed this. Shared rituals synchronize neural activity, increase trust, deepen group identity, in measurable documented ways. When a group of ancient humans sat together breathing psychoactive smoke in an enclosed space, that was not just recreational. That was social technology. That was how you built the kind of deep trust that let you go into dangerous situations together and come back alive. The ritual smoke circle was not just a party. It was infrastructure. Now, let us go deeper into specific ancient smoking traditions around the world, because they are extraordinary. Ancient China, one of the earliest civilizations on Earth, and they had their own smoking traditions. Chinese texts from over 2,000 years ago describe the burning of aromatic woods and herbs in rituals, not just for smell, for connection with ancestors, for communication with spirits. Incense burning in China is over 2,000 years old, with deep roots going further back still. Ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, also burned aromatic substances deliberately. Sumerian texts describe the burning of juniper and cedar in temple rituals. The smoke was an offering, a way of sending something precious toward the gods. The word perfume comes from the Latin perfumum, through smoke. Think about that for a moment. Modern perfume is descended from ancient sacred smoke. The scent that pleased the gods became the scent that pleases people. Ancient Egypt, and the extraordinary relationship between smoke and the divine. Kifi, an ancient Egyptian incense blend, was one of the most complex substances ever created in the ancient world. It contained up to 16 ingredients: honey, wine, raisins, frankincense, myrrh, juniper, and more, burned at sunset every day in Egyptian temples, for thousands of years, used as medicine, as a sedative, as a treatment for anxiety and nightmares. Some of the ingredients in kifi have been pharmacologically analyzed. They work, actually work. Ancient Egyptian physicians were not guessing. They were accumulating clinical knowledge over generations. Now, let us travel to the Americas, and the extraordinary diversity of smoking traditions there. The peace pipe, or calumet, of the Plains nations of North America. One of the most misunderstood objects in all of human history. It was not just a pipe. It was a legal instrument, a diplomatic tool, a sacred object all at once. When two tribes shared the calumet, they were making a binding agreement. The smoke carried the agreement upward, to be witnessed by the spirits, making it unbreakable. Breaking a calumet agreement was one of the most serious violations in many indigenous cultures. The pipe was not just smoking. It was law. It was religion. It was diplomacy, all compressed into smoke. In Mesoamerica, the Aztec and Maya had their own elaborate smoking traditions. Maya carvings from over 2,000 years ago show figures smoking through long pipes in ritual contexts. The smoke shone always rising, always moving upward, always carrying something toward the divine. The Aztecs smoked tobacco specifically before and after rituals of all kinds. It was a preparation ritual, a way of signaling. What follows is sacred. Pay attention. In the Amazon, shamans used tobacco in concentrations far higher than modern cigarettes. Not to get a mild nicotine hit, to induce visionary states, to travel between worlds. The shaman was a professional, with years of training in how to navigate those states, and return with information that could heal the sick, or guide the community. Now, here is where the story takes a deeply uncomfortable turn. The transition from sacred smoke to casual habit is historically an absolute disaster. When tobacco arrived in Europe in the 16th century, it spread with a speed that should remind you of something. Within decades, smoking had gone from exotic curiosity to continental obsession. By the 1600s, tobacco was being traded globally, as a commodity, for profit. By the 1700s, snuff was fashionable across European aristocracy. By the 1800s, cigars were everywhere, on every street, in every class. By the early 1900s, the industrially manufactured cigarette had arrived, making tobacco cheaper, more convenient, and more addictive than anything that had come before. What had taken indigenous Americans thousands of years to incorporate carefully into their culture was turned into a mass-market consumer product within 4 centuries by European industrialists. And then the tobacco industry did something extraordinary. In the worst possible sense, they had scientists, their own internal scientists, who had found that cigarettes caused cancer. And for decades, they spent billions of dollars suppressing that evidence. They marketed cigarettes to children, directly, intentionally. They hired doctors to endorse their products. In advertisements, they added chemical compounds specifically to make nicotine hit faster and harder, and leave the system more quickly, maximizing addiction and maximizing repeat purchase. They turned something ancient and ritualistic and communal into a product specifically engineered to destroy. A shaman and a tobacco executive both worked with the same plant. They had almost nothing else in common. The gap between a shaman in 500 BCE placing cannabis on hot stones in a burial ritual, and a tobacco executive in 1960 signing off on marketing cigarettes to teenagers, is one of the larger moral chasms in human history. Both involve smoke. Almost nothing else is the same. Now, let us return to the original question. When did ancient humans start smoking? The honest answer is, we do not know exactly, and we probably never will. The physical evidence takes us back 12,000 years with confidence, and possibly much further with reasonable speculation. The behavioral drive underlying smoking, the desire to alter consciousness, is almost certainly far older than any artifact we have found. It may be as old as fire itself. It may be as old as the cognitive leap that made us human in the first place. The ability to connect cause and effect. To look at a burning plant and think, last time that happened, I felt different. Let me do that again. That is not addiction. That is intelligence. What we know for certain is this. By the time written history begins, they were already doing it. In every corner of the world where humans lived, they were already finding ways to put smoke into their bodies. The specific plants changed. The rituals changed. The purposes changed. But the behavior was already ancient by the time anyone thought to write it down. There is something almost poetic about that. For all the things that separate modern humans from our ancestors, the technology, the medicine, the internet, the truly baffling amount of content we consume every day, there are these thin threads of continuity, running unbroken through hundreds of thousands of years. Fire, smoke, breath. The oldest humans sat around fires and breathed the same smoky air you would smell at a bonfire tonight. Some of them, at some point, started paying attention to what that smoke was doing to them. And then they started choosing it. And then they started passing that choice down. To the Scythians howling with pleasure in their tents. To the Egyptian physicians prescribing herbal smoke for lung disease. To the Maya shamans reading visions in the rising smoke. To the Taino people on a Caribbean beach watching confused Europeans try tobacco for the first time, and cough until their eyes watered. The next time you catch a whiff of wood smoke on a cold night, stop. You are participating in something far older than you realize. You are doing what humans have always done. You are breathing. If this changed how you think about the oldest air you know, that is exactly what this channel is here for.